So pretty and new, and the tub is so deep, and I can't wait to just like go climb in it and just lay there.
Our designers are standing by to guide you step by step. So call now to get your one-day installation and find out how you can get luxurious upgrades and a lifetime warranty from a brand you know you can trust.
Was done in the same day. You did not have to wait.
It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I was dreaming of.
Jacuzzi bath remodel did not disappoint.
Your new jacuzzi, bath, or shower is waiting. Now is the best time to call and take advantage of one of Jacuzzi's best offers ever.
Call or go online right now for a limited time offer. Only weeks left to get free installation and no interest and no payments for up to 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800.
And other moves that would overhaul the federal government. And so, look, they could claim that it has to do with money. The issue is that don't make any sense. Montana gets $40 million from the Department of Education. That's just the money they get from disabilities alone, and it's 15% of the overall education budget. Again, like, what are we supposed to do with these people? Like, not only the questionable language about slavery and little black girls, and I don't need a guy that looks like that to be talking like that, but this like farcical idea of the state of segregation and integration. And again, in a race that he's currently leading, he's beating the incumbent, John Tester. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he needs to read a book or take a class. That's my first recommendation to him, thinking of the Department of Education. I just don't understand why the Democrats are hard against the Department of Education. It is needed. That does not mean that there cannot be things done differently in any bureaucracy. We should be looking at these various departments and make sure that they are still up to mission, and it has the mission changed for the new century or the new technology, things like that. But to totally want to eradicate the Department of Education, John, I don't get it. I don't know why they are doing this. And as far as the little black girls and segregation and stuff, as you laid out, schools are more segregated now in the 21st century than they were in the 20th century. It is important to have that department beyond integration. It is bigger than the conversation about integration. It is also the money that you're talking about. A lot of these schools, kids from more wealthy or affluent communities, the per pupil cost is more, or what is spent on educating them is more, because most school systems rely on property taxes. So if children live in cities like Cleveland, Ohio is another one, where the poverty rate is extraordinarily high compared.
And for some reason, these polling averages, Jonathan, when you go to these sites, they get low quality Republican polls that are constantly skewing. I mean, I don't even look at the numbers first. I look at who conducted the poll, and then I just keep going, because, and by the way, that's not just on, that's not just on the right. If I see like left-wing Action Progress going to, whatever, I'll flip past that as well. But you're right, there aren't a lot of good, high-quality polls, and I just wonder, because I've never seen this on a weekend where you're 2 weeks out from the presidential race. But, they could be saying, we have no idea. Right? The Trump campaign, it's so funny talking to people in the Trump campaign. This is the best that Donald Trump said, and maybe he's going to win in a landslide. They're talking like he's going to win in a landslide. Will tell you the serious people in that campaign, the serious people in the Harris campaign, the serious people who really know what's going on, all say that right now the race is tied. It could go in either direction. This is a turnout game, Jonathan.
No question. The Trump folks who like to brag to reporters certainly did a lot of that this weekend, saying that this is the best they've felt about this race since the RNC convention, i.e. before Kamala Harris came on the ticket. But those in the inner circles acknowledge, no, this is much, much closer. We heard from David Bluff again over the weekend, one of the leaders of the Harris campaign, saying, look, all our internals say this is a dead heat. We'd rather be us than them. But we have a lot of work to do in these last 2 weeks. And I agree with you, Joe. I think the lack of polls here is sort of an acknowledgement that the polls can't really be trusted right now, that no one really knows. And I'm sure we'll get a flood next weekend. I think we can, Joe, set your alarm for the New York Times Siena College poll freakout next Sunday morning. That's going to come. But I think right now we're seeing also a real debate among pollsters. They missed in 2016, the undercounted Trump votes. They missed in 2020 by undercounted Trump votes. He lost, but not by nearly the margin that was anticipated. And then, of course, as we just discussed, they missed in 2022 by overstating Republican votes. And right now it seems to be, how are they sampling? How are they weighing this? How are they trying to account for these so-called hidden Trump votes? And there's some belief that they're overstating it, that there aren't as many hidden Trump votes this time around, and the pollsters are getting it wrong that way.
Well, Jonathan, let's talk through this just so people that are looking at polls on both sides understand what's going on. And what's going on, you have, of course,
on road ahead. much are they going to be breaking for Donald Trump? That's the first question, and that's, of course, that's the bright, shiny object that the press is chasing after. And then after you do that, you start hearing about white, educated voters with college degrees and how they're breaking more towards Harris. This is in record numbers. So this is a question of who breaks more, how much more do they break, who gets their voters out. And that's why when you talk to serious grown-ups in both campaigns, they will tell you, we have no idea. Right now, we feel good. Both sides are saying, we're not going to say what's going to happen, but we feel pretty good about where we are right now. But it's all a turnout game. But the one thing I keep hearing from Harris people, especially this weekend, while I hear from Trump people this weekend, they're feeling very confident. Harris people, who are all veterans of Hillary's 2016 campaign, we're not going to start getting confident.
Watch out.
We're not going to
Vehicle
start.
on shoulder ahead.
Just as you said, they say quietly, we like the direction this is moving. It is tied right now. We may be down like a point in North Carolina right now. We may be down a couple of points in Arizona right now, but we're feeling good about the rest of it. We're tied, but we like the direction we're going. That's how they're saying 15 days out. So much can change in 15 days, Jonathan. I always go back to the first big election of my life that I remembered, Reagan and Jimmy Carter, that I followed really closely. Going into Friday, everybody was saying, this race is up in the air. This race is tied. At least that's what the commentators were saying. And then we saw on election night, one broadcaster after another being shocked by the size and scale of Reagan's landslide. Just like we saw people shocked in 2016 by Donald Trump's victory. Just like we saw people shocked in 2022 by the red wave that never materialized because, as you said, they overestimated Republican support. Now the question is, with Donald Trump on the ballot, does that push those numbers back up to a level where once again, maybe they're overcompensating or undercompensating? We just don't know. And we don't know how many Republican undervotes there will be in states like Wisconsin that gave Joe Biden the election in 2020. So these are all, pollsters can guess. We can guess. But as Tom Brokaw told us, after everybody had been saying Hillary was going to lose the primary to Barack Obama in New Hampshire in 2008, maybe we should wait and let the voters tell us which way this election's going.
No question there. We are still 2 weeks or so away. So events can happen. James Comey's letter in 2016 is one example. Though, of course, this time around, more and more Americans have already voted because so many are voting early. But to your point, if it's a turnout, if it is simply a turnout election and it's about ground game and blocking and tackling, that's likely advantage Harris. They have more money, they have a better and bigger field operation. But if it is a question of what's the hidden vote here, is there a bigger than expected black or Latino vote for Trump, as the polls sort of suggest? Well, that's a huge advantage to him. But I'd like to end on this note. There's certainly a huge, maybe biggest ever gender gap in this year's election. Trump doing very well with women, Harris doing Trump doing very well with men, Harris doing historically well with women. That's what the polls suggest. And I think there's some people in Trump in the Harris campaign who've told me this, that if they think there is a hidden vote, a quiet vote, it's women, suburban women, many of them Republican.
I'm going to take a shortcut if I can get over.
We go back and forth, swing voters. We're going to break for Harris. And 3-4 weeks from now, whenever the dust is actually settled, we're all going to look at each other and say, you know what this was? This was the first presidential election after Dobbs. And it was abortion rights all along that was the story. It was staring us in the face.
All right. With that in mind, let's bring in Democratic Senator of Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. She joins us from Wisconsin, where she has been campaigning Harris as an official campaign surrogate. She also campaigned in Michigan for Harris over the weekend. And I'd like to ask you what you're hearing when you're talking to voters, Senator, about the key issues in this campaign. And is Jonathan Lemire correct that abortion health care, life-saving health care for women that does not exist for them now, is that a central issue?
So there's a lot of energy on the ground. Right now I'm in Stevens Point. I was in Eau Claire yesterday. You're in these towns and people are showing up and they are fired up. And Jonathan is exactly right. A big part of what they're fired up about is that they understand that right now in Wisconsin, they feel safe on the abortion issue, but they recognize that more than 30% of women all across this country effectively have no access to abortion. And that gets them fired up because they understand that if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance take the White House, it won't be 30%, it'll be 100%, because they're coming for abortion all across this country. J.D. Vance has already written a letter to the Department of Justice telling them to enforce the Comstock Act, did that before he was vice presidential candidate, but it lays out the groundwork. That's what Project 2025 does. So when I'm out talking to people, what I see is I see a lot of women and a lot of friends of women who are really fired up. And the point is they're out there doing something. They're knocking on doors, they're making phone calls, they're texting. They're taking their anxiety and they're putting it into action. And I'm really hopeful that's going to pay off.
Okay, so Donald Trump, Senator, sat down with Howard Kurtz of Fox News yesterday for a wide-ranging interview in which the former president argued that a news program should be taken off the air because it aired contacts that he didn't like, that certain Democrats are, quote, enemies from within, including some of your colleagues, that January 6th was, quote, a beautiful thing, the insurrection at the Capitol, and that the dangerous lies he spread about legal Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, weren't his fault. I'm going to play them, and I'd like to talk to you on the other side. Take a listen.
I've never seen anything like it. She gave a horrible, incompetent answer on a news program. It's not an entertainment program. They call it news. They say it's a #1 news program. And so she gives an answer that shows that she's dumb or incompetent or something wrong with her. It's so bad that the people at CBS say, we're not going to do a little editing like the word the, make it there, something. You understand? They take the whole ridiculous answer out, and it was a long answer, and replace it with a much shorter answer that she did having to do with a totally different subject, which also didn't make sense, but it wasn't as incompetent. I think it's the biggest scandal I've ever seen for a broadcaster. In 60 minutes, no, I think 60 minutes, I think it should be taken off the air, frankly. The outside people, the so-called enemies, if they're enemies, and they might not be enemies, if you have a smart president, they can be handled. But when you have people investigating my campaign, when you have people, they spied on my campaign now, you understand that, that's been proven. But they spy on your campaign. The Russia hoax was all made up, and now it's acknowledged that it was made up. All of these different things. You have the 51 different agents saying it was from Russia, and now they all say it wasn't from Russia. Okay, so we were lying. Many other things, many. I could go over. You just don't have enough time. But what they've done is so terrible. Who's ever heard of anything like this? Adam Shifty Schiff, he's a crooked guy. He's a crooked politician, 100%. He's going to be a senator now. Can you believe it?
But again, he's a political opponent of yours.
He's not an enemy. No, he's an enemy. He's an enemy. These are bad people. We have a lot of bad people. But when you look at Shifty Schiff and some of the others, they are, to me, the enemy from within. I think Nancy Pelosi is an enemy from within. She lied. She was supposed to protect the Capitol. A small group of people went down to the Capitol, and then a lot of strange things happened, including police ushering them into the Capitol. I mean, you know that. And a lot of strange things. So I'm not referring to that. I'm saying that when I saw that tremendous crowd, the largest group I've ever spoken to, in front of these beautiful monuments.
Your inauguration crowd was the largest group you ever spoke to.
It was a protest.
And I thought your rallies were the largest group
Your famous line about Springfield, Ohio, and I take your point that 15 to 20,000 legal Haitian immigrants settling in that area causes a lot of friction. But when you said, and you know it's gone viral, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, you say you're just reporting what had been said. But why not say now, well, look, that turned out not to be true.
I don't know if it's not true. I don't know if it's true or not true. I read something.
You don't know if it's true or not true. It's been debunked by
the official. What about the geese? What about the geese? What happened there? They were all missing.
That was in Columbus, Ohio, dipshit.
I have no idea. I said something. The big problem is that you can't put 30,000 people into a 50,000 person town or city and expect this city to even survive or do well. What they've done to Springfield, Ohio is very, very unfair. And I mean, there are a lot of stories. There are a lot of other stories that I've heard that are horrible stories. I haven't said it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But that's a story that was reported, and I said that. Why don't you go after the newspaper that wrote it? Don't blame me.
You keep spreading the lies, and even spread the lies there, and then Howard calls him out, and he says the geese are all missing, and then mumbles and says, "I have no idea." Senator, a couple things. We could talk about all the lies there. We could talk about Springfield. We could talk about the lies. He talks about the Russia hoax. By the way, I want to read you what the Republican-led Senate Intel Committee said about the 2016 campaign. The report's language is often stark, and said that Paul Manafort and the campaign's receptivity to Russian outreach was a grave counterintelligence threat and made the campaign susceptible to, quote, malign Russian influence. So that doesn't sound, if Marco Rubio-led Intel Committee is saying that the campaign posed a grave counterintelligence threat, doesn't sound like a hoax to me. I do wonder, what about a major party candidate, a former president, saying that Xi is not an enemy, Putin's not an enemy, Kim Jong-un is not an enemy, but that fellow Americans who oppose his policies are enemies of the state, enemies from within.
Look, 10 different ways Donald Trump is telling us that he intends to be a dictator, that if he can seize power, he wants to run it like a dictator. That's true when he identifies not the countries and the leaders of the countries that are dictatorships that threaten the United States, but identifies people who are just his political rivals here in the United States. It's true when he says, oh, if there's news coverage that disagrees with the Trump position, then it needs to be shut down. It's true when Donald Trump lies, gets caught in a lie, and just continues to repeat the lie, because he's saying there are no curbs on me. I will go ahead as Donald Trump and I will proclaim what constitutes truth. And he will seize all power for himself. We truly have to understand that in this election, there is a man who is telling us loud and clear, give him the chance and he will be dictator, not just for a day, he will be dictator. He wants to destroy our democracy because he wants all the power for himself.
All right, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, we hear you. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. We want to turn now to Communications Director for the Harris-Walz campaign, Michael Tyler. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. So where do you begin with Kamala Harris's closing arguments, trying to frame what's at stake and what the key issues are for her?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Listen, we're about 2 weeks out from Election Day. Voting is already underway. And so what you'll see this week is the Vice President crisscrossing the battleground states, talking to every segment of the Harris-Walz coalition about exactly what the stakes of this election are, right? She'll be traveling today with Liz Cheney, with Charlie Sykes, with Sarah Longwell, reaching out to moderates, to Republican voters in these key suburban counties, telling them that, yes, it's not only time to turn the page on Donald Trump and seek a new way forward where we can achieve everything that she's been talking about since she launched this campaign, an opportunity economy where people can actually get ahead, but also for folks who don't even necessarily agree with the vice president on every single issue. If you're concerned about what you just saw in that interview with Donald Trump and Howie Kurtz, a man who's increasingly unstable, unhinged, who disrespects the rule of law, disrespects the Constitution, there's a home for you in the vice president's campaign. And so increasingly, that's what we're seeing as we travel across the country, as we see this growing and diverse coalition of voters that's coming behind Vice President Harris. We've got 2 weeks to shore up all of those votes, but we're confident in our operation. We're confident in our candidate's message to do exactly that.
So, Michael, the vice president back on the road today with former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Tell us a little bit about that effort to try to reach perhaps Republicans, to get them to cross the aisle. But how do you balance that with trying to appeal with members of the Democratic base, some who have their concerns about the ticket because of Gaza or other issues, and who are repulsed by the name Cheney? How are you doing both?
Yeah, listen, we can do both. We should do both. We are doing both, right? You've seen the vice president speak to the entire coalition that makes up the Harris-Walz coalition, right? We've done this through the barnstorming that we've done across the battleground states. We've also done it through our media engagements and the interviews, doing everything from All the Smoke to Call Her Daddy to Howard Stern to Fox News last week. And again, traveling across these key suburban counties with Liz Cheney today. We think that the Harris-Walz coalition understands that we're stronger when we are diverse, right? When you have people who may not agree on everything, but who understand the fundamental stakes. It also speaks to the fact that Vice President Harris intends to govern as a president for all Americans. We think that is a point of contrast between the vice president and Donald Trump, who, as you guys were just discussing, refers to half the country as enemies from within, people who disagree with them, journalists, voters, vulnerable communities, right? And so I think no matter where you are on the political spectrum, I think most voters are tired of that behavior. They're tired of that rhetoric. They're looking for somebody who is offering a new way forward, not just on the policies that the vice president is proposing, but on the entire approach to politics, right? Not vilifying, demonizing one another, but actually bringing people together to get things done. And that's exactly what the vice president is doing throughout this campaign and what she'll do as president.
So, Michael, I want to get your reaction to this. The Trump campaign has spent millions on political ads in battleground states, including Vice President Harris, of supporting taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries for prisoners and migrants. According to NPR, such ads have run more than 30,000 times, primarily during NFL and college football games, events with high male viewership. The problem? It's a policy that was actually carried out by the Trump administration. A new report by the New York Times finds that, and I'll quote from it, Trump appointees at the Bureau of Prisons provided an array of gender-affirming treatments, including hormone therapy, for a small group of inmates who requested it during Mr. Trump's 4 years in office. In a February 2018 budget memo to Congress, Bureau officials wrote that under federal law, they were obligated to pay for a prisoner's surgery if it was deemed medically necessary. Legal wrangling delayed the first such operation until 2022. The paper continues. Transgender offenders may require individual counseling and emotional support, officials wrote. Medical care may include pharmaceutical interventions, which includes cross-gender hormone therapy, hair removal, and surgery, if individualized assessment indicates surgical intervention is applicable. The statement, in part, reflected guidelines that officials in the Obama administration released shortly before they left office. The most significant change the Trump administration made in the treatment guidelines after it took over was the addition of the word necessary, which created a higher but not insurmountable barrier to federally funded surgeries. In an email to the Times, the Trump campaign said the former president has never forcefully advocated for transgender inmates to be able to get transition surgery. So, Joe, another example of rank hypocrisy from the Trump administration, as well as more disinformation.
wasn't a Trump policy. They actually looked at that policy and added wording to it, so it's not like they didn't know they had that policy where prisoners can receive gender-affirming care. Trump policy.
They sent these documents to Congress. They sent them to Congress to talk about gender-affirming care that prisoners may be. You know, I watch football as well as you, Jonathan, and I have seen these ads run non-stop. I got to say, it's up to the Harris campaign to actually, and I'm glad we have somebody from there, communications director from the Harris campaign, to actually
I'm sure he's happy to be here.
Push back. So let me ask you, Michael Tyler, 30,000 ads. 30,000 ads showing Kamala Harris in a forum. Oh yeah, I do this.
It's the law.
It's the law. It's the Trump law. These are Donald Trump's documents from the Justice Department. This is what Donald Trump's Justice Department sent to Congress. Let me say this again. This is what Donald Trump's Justice Department sent to Congress, talking about the, quote, gender-affirming care that inmates would need to get. Taxpayer-funded gender-affirming care. Now, I've got to say, it sounds like a crazy idea to me. And we could have that debate at another time. And I will say, it sounds like a crazy idea to a lot of Americans. But we can have that debate another time. I guess my question is, how does the Harris-Walz campaign allow 30,000 commercials on NFL programs to have Donald Trump take some words that Kamala Harris said out of a forum in 2019, when at the same time his administration, his Justice Department,
there's a real answer
was
to it,
advocating for this? What is it, Michael? What's the answer?
Yeah, I think the vice president spoke to this when she sat down with Brett Baer, calling out exactly the point that you've been making, that not only will she follow the law as president, as she has done as vice president, but this is exactly what the Trump administration itself was doing and implementing when they were in power, right? I think the reason that the Trump campaign is doing this, I think they're doing it for a couple of reasons, frankly. Number one, they don't actually want to have a conversation about health care in the United States of America when you have a candidate who's talking about terminating the ACA, repealing the $35 cap on insulin. They don't want to have a conversation about health care that affects all 350 million people in the United States of America. They want to hone in on hypocritic attacks that are meant to divide and sow chaos, right, in the final weeks of this campaign. They also, the reason they're spending millions of dollars in this misleading attack is the fact that they don't have a candidate who is up for the job in the final stretch of the campaign. You guys aired the Howie Kurtz interview. You've seen him over the course of the weekend where he gets up on the stage and instead of offering his closing argument as his campaign said he was going to, talks about News and talks about geese and cats and dogs. They don't have a candidate who is up to the task in the final stretch, so their only tool is this paid media campaign down the final stretch. What this campaign is going to do is be clear-eyed about the vice president's vision, and we're going to continue to put Donald Trump's nonsense front and center in front of the American people. So whether they are hiding their candidate or not, we are going to make sure that he is exposed over the course of the final 15 days of this campaign.
Communications Director for the Harris-Walz campaign, Michael Tyler, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. Thank you.
Can you believe this? Jonathan,
yeah, I can't believe it, actually. That's no surprise to me, but it will be a surprise to some watching football.
Jonathan,
who think it's just a crazy Kamala idea.
U.S. Department of Justice.
Trump.
U.S. Department of Justice. Federal Bureau of Prisons Director Mike Inch. Transgender Offender Manual, dated May 11th, 2018. And they go through and they talk about all the things they need to do for transgender inmates or people that may want transgender what do they call it? Gender affirming care. Gender affirming care. Management of offenders with transgender needs. Now I will say again, offending many people in this audience, I don't get this. I just don't. Like taxpayer supported dollars for this.
Well,
right?
It's very complicated.
It's very complicated. Yes, we'll just say that for some people it's very complicated. But I just say that to say we can have that debate at another time. The debate we cannot have is how hypocritical the Trump campaign has been, running 30,000 ads during NFL games to impact black male voters, Hispanic male voters, working class white male voters. That's why they say they're doing it. That's their target audience. They're doing this because of what Kamala said in a 2019 forum. While Donald Trump's Justice Department, Donald Trump's the head of his Bureau of Prisons, was sending instructions to Congress about gender affirming care and possibly surgery, taxpayer funded surgery. This is the Donald Trump transplant right here. And for the life of me, I don't understand how the Harris campaign allows 30,000 commercials to run on NFL games. And they're sitting there going, and this is just a truly liberal Democratic thing to do, I guess. And people on the campaign scratching their heads going, this isn't a real issue. And then they're going, why are we losing black men and Hispanic men and working class white men? And they go, we don't think this ad is having an impact. Oh, really? It's not having an impact? Why are they running the ads 30,000 times?
Yeah, those ads are everywhere.
To you, my friend.
Those ads are everywhere. Those ads are everywhere, and in particular in the battleground states. As I mentioned last week, I was just in suburban Philadelphia, and the Trump ads, a lot of immigration to be sure, but this was the number 2 topic, despite that has such a narrow wedge issue. This was the number 2 topic. They feel like they're onto something here, and we just fact check it in one way, as you just laid out. Let's just reiterate one date. That order for the DOJ, dated May 11th, 2018. Donald J. Trump was president.
Right. Yeah. So again, the Transgender Offender Manual. This is Donald Trump's Transgender Offender Manual.
And
guidance.
Taxpayer funded.
On transgender surgeries, gender affirming care in Donald Trump's prisons when he was president.
Hypocrites.
Just responding to that soundbite they keep running of Kamala Harris talking about that happening in prisons and being the law. Trump's policy.
Again.
Bad merge.
Okay.
Right? And they're getting a clip from Kamala Harris at a forum? Really?
Confirming what the law is. Coming up, Elon Musk is pledging to give away $1 million a day to voters for signing his Political Action Committee's petition backing the Constitution. But is that against the law? Paying voters to... Okay. That's next on Morning Joe.
This is an important message for everyone on Medicare. Right now is the Medicare annual enrollment period. And today we are talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now. You may be eligible for plans that will some covered additional benefits or cost savings you may not be receiving now. Different Part C plans are available in different parts of the country, so don't wait to call your member or screen now. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We'll check to see if there was any receipt and recommend additional.